Good morning. My name's Ray. I'm with Team S.T.E.A.M. It's about 6:30 in the morning, and today I'm here at Flash Industrial Painting because we are going to do some lounging. And what I mean by that is, if you watch the video where we transformed that old pickup seat into this garden bench, then you're already familiar with how I use trampoline poles and pallet wood to create furniture. And now I'm about to build two matching loungers to go with this, so the whole set will then seat 5 people out of the same materials, minus the pickup seat frame. So here's my little garden cart full of trampoline poles, and these aren't just, they look random, but it's not a random assortment. I've carefully gone through and picked out what I want based on their shapes, and I'm going to see if I can make some of these shapes make some sense. All right, so here's what it looks like now that I've got all these taken out of that cart. Okay, so what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm going to take this angle right here and I'm going to make it much wider. Much wider. Well, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to find some place in that chassis on that semi right there that I can wedge it, put a cheater bar on this end, and I'm going to be able to do that because I'm going to cut it right here. And I'm not cutting it right here just so I can use a cheater bar. I'm cutting it right here so I can turn this 90 degrees and then weld it right back on. And that'll make more sense as you see this project goes on. All right, so I've got myself a workstation set up like you would expect if you've watched much of my videos by now. And this is just an old chop saw. And when I bought a new chop saw, I went ahead and retired this one from basic carpentry duties and turned it into my full-time metal cutting chop saw. So if you do get a new chop saw for Christmas or something like that, don't just throw out the old one or leave it sit in a corner, put a metal cutting blade on it. And so anyway, I've gone ahead and cut these trampoline poles here, and you can see I did 4 instead of just 2 because I'm building 2 loungers here, so I got to do everything 2 times. Now I'm going to take these ends, take them over here, and try and open up those angles. So what I've done here to expand this angle that I was talking about is I've taken one of these, and I told you I was going to cut the end off, and I did. And then I just found a place on this chassis of this truck, and I've done this for years. Every time I go to build something, if there's a chassis nearby that's not already painted, I'll just use parts of it to be able to get leverage and do what I got to do. And so what I've done here is I found a spot that's going to work for my measurements. Right down under here. I tuck it under the chassis. Then I put my cheater on this end, and then I pull down. And when I do that, I expand that angle into this angle. And so now I've got this set up. I've got a level on that guy down there. I've got this about as straight as I need it to be. I'm going to go ahead and I plug this piece that looks like this piece into there. Now I'm going to go ahead and just weld it. That'll be the first step. And so now I've welded that joint together, that joint together, that one, and that one. And so what I've done here is I've taken these pieces and I've cut them to where I've isolated these corners, all 4 of them. Because I need 2 for this lounger and 2 for the other one. So I'm just cutting out doubles on everything just to get it over with. And then I'm going to take these guys. I'm going to weld this one on right here, facing that. I'm going to weld on one right here, facing that one. And now here's what I've ended up with. This is 20 inches across up here and down there. Welded up solid all the way around, all the joints. And now I've laid 10-15 boards across there and then sat on it and made sure that the height was right. The overall height off the ground is right. And now that I've got that right, I'm going to go ahead and build the legs to hold it up. So what I want to do is I got this piece of complete scrap iron out of a pile, and I'm going to cut it to a length that'll go across there and then cut another length out of the other side, just on the other side of that hole, just so I have a second one so I can do the same thing to the second lounger when I build it. And then I'll weld it right across here to there, and then weld this directly to that. So I want to take that big bar, cut it in 2 like I've done here, and then use as much of it as I feel like I need to bridge this gap right here and bring it an element of stability, but also an element of design that starts to mimic the side of this one. And so now that I've got the prototype all figured out and cut, Put it on here. Fits nicely. So I've got all my front legs cut out. There's the two that go to this lounger. The back braces, there's the two that go to this lounger. And I cut all of these pieces out in duplicate, all of them, and they're all right here. So now that I've got this first one done, the second one is going to be much easier. I already took the time to cut out all the same pieces at all the same angles. I did all the same procedures. They're just ready to weld together. And now to go ahead and install some sort of foot on each one of these. I've found this piece of stainless just off of some semi that I took off for a while back. And I'm gonna, as you can see, I've gridded it off 2.5 by 2.5 roughly. It's more like 2 1/4 by 2.5, but then I'm gonna cut all these out, and then I'm gonna round the edges off, and then I'm gonna weld all of them to all 4 legs of both of those loungers, so they are not as apt to sink into the ground. Okay, so now I've got them all cut out and I've got the corners all rounded. I'm going to take all 8 of them and weld them onto these. And so what I did was I took some braces like these, cut them out to this, almost this exact shape, 4 of them, and welded them in right there at the front. And the reason I did that is because I just wanted to make very sure that if enough weight was ever placed on the front, that there's basically no chance it's going to sink down or be compromised. And it doesn't hurt with the look, so I'm happy with it. I feel like they're pretty solid now. Now I'm going to get them all sandblasted and or sanded and get them in color. And so what I'm doing here is my first initial cut, and I've taken 2 pallets worth of boards that I find usable. Here's just a hair over a pallet's worth. There's a couple boards I've stacked over here from the next one, but it's about half. And here's about the other half. I've already taken a couple of them and run them through the table saw. But that's all I'm doing, is I'm just running them through this this table saw that I got given to me by my wife's grandfather years ago. He's the one that built the stand for it and stuff. He was an old carpenter, among many other things. And so I think he'd be happy to know that we're running it straight into the ground. He wouldn't want it any other way. We've done so many projects with this table saw. So at any rate, we're doing another one. And I'm going to finish running those boards through. Right now they start at 3.5 inches. I've got them down to 3 inches here. Then I'm going to flip them over, run them through again, and get them down to 2.5 inches, pulling all necessary nails along the way. You can see, like on this one, I had to pull the nails so I didn't cause any damage to my blade. And this one I did not, at least on the first cut. So you just look at that, keep your nail side up, make sure that you're not going to be damaging your blade or getting into it at all. And if you're not, then leave them. They're fine. All right, now I've got my station set up here. I'm going to take a board, put it up here, clamp it in place like I have. Sand it with this speed sander. It's a rotary sander, both sides. Then flip it over and sand it one side, the one that I intend to paint with a regular sander, a DA sander. And I'm going to paint the whole thing, but it's the side that's going to face up all the time will be with the DA sander. So there won't be any of the marks left behind from that tool in the finished product. All right, so now I've got all these boards cut in half. They're all loaded up in my garden cart. I'm going to go ahead and run them out here and set up another station with some sawhorses, so I got a place for my roller and my materials, and start rolling them out and setting them up against those. And now I got my station all set up. Got some white epoxy primer like I use on everything I paint. All my vehicles, everything is the same epoxy primer in 3 different shades, but this is the white. And I'm going to go ahead and roll this out. I'm going to blow each one of these off, and then roll each one out, and then set it against there. And then when I get done with the last one, I'll come through and do them all again, because they'll need 2 coats. And rolling them will sink it into all these cracks really well. It'll really coat them well. Then I'll leave them out here all day long, and then sometime this afternoon I'll go ahead and spray them with 1 single coat of the polyurethane that I shoot also on vehicles. It's a 2K urethane, but it's the same paint that I put on vehicles, and that's what I'm going to put on these as well. All right, so I've got some of these boards laid out on here, and none of them are tied down. They're all just laid out, but I want to get my gaps right. I want to make sure, mostly I want to make sure I started here And I want to make sure that by the end, I've got enough to actually mount a board. That's what matters. And that's why I wanted to dry fit it before I do anything. So we've got this bottom row all screwed down. It's all ready to go, ready to be cut. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the next boards on, and each board from here on out is going to have a screwdriver at each side poking out of it as a spacer, just so we can make sure we have them all the same and have them right, and start putting those on one at a time. Now on this job, basically everything is used. I've used some new auto body products because that just makes perfect sense. But outside of that, almost every single other thing has been upcycled or repurposed, including the screws. This bucket of screws right here, the reason that they're already rusty is because I used them years ago, a decade ago, maybe more. It was more actually. It was about 12 years ago to put siding on a trailer house. When we tore down the trailer house, we took the siding back. But even these screws, I took out of those panels and saved. As you can see, they're being used in this lounger, and they'll be used in the other lounger. They were used in that bench as well. So we're gonna keep going with them until they're gone even. All right, so we've got them both all screwed together. Now I'm going to go ahead and figure out what design I'm gonna go with and see if I can make it work on both of them and get it put on both of them. All right, I've got all my marks on here. All my corners marked. These are a tighter radius than the top corners. They're a much looser radius, just because I wanted it to resemble this a little bit more. The top radius is fairly large and the bottom one's pretty tight. So those are the lines I have drawn on it. I don't know how well they translate. Well, they're both cut out. I've gone a full inch narrower there than I am down here. And that break starts right about here and right about there. So it's about an inch wider there and an inch wider there than it is in the middle. Just a very subtle thing, but it makes them look 10 feet long when you do stuff like that. So it's kind of neat. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the more decorative elements to them both so we can finish them up. All right, so I've gone and gotten some folders we're not using out of a file cabinet. And this is some of the best material to trace things onto and then cut out, because it's just flexible enough to go over anything, but just stout enough to when you go to trace it back onto something else, it works really well. So I like to use this more often than not. And I've got two of them here. And the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to do a bunch of 3 cherries, about like that one, but without the leaves. And I'm going to do that design on one of these wide open and then cut it out so I can repeat it on the red lounger. All right, I've gotten the shapes put on there that I wanted. I've gotten them cut out. This is kind of a typical cherry shape. I cut out a stem just so I can put the stems wherever I want and get this kind of gradual shape to be pretty reliable. And then we've got this slightly oval shape. It's only slightly oval to resemble a grape. And then these will be put on there, of course, in bunches. All right, so now I'm at the point where I can go ahead and put some vinyl tape on these, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this 1/4 inch vinyl tape and I'm going to outline everything that I intend to stop paint from being on. So now at this point, I'm ready to go ahead and mix up the two different colors, put them in roller trays, get my roller all ready. I got a couple foam rollers, and go ahead and get these guys rolled out. All right, so we've got them both done. I've given it a few hours. It's a pretty hot day. They're both good and set up, dry to the touch. I'm going to go ahead and start unmasking them. All right, so here they are. We went ahead and went around the side just like we did with the flowers. Yep, turned out pretty nice. That'll easily hold 3 people, 4 people my size. Even has a good sheen on it, even though I wasn't necessarily going for that. And so that's really what's been represented here, is 3 of the many things that we grow here, and they're all going to be together as a set down in the lower garden. So there you have it, 3 pieces of yard furniture that didn't cost me hardly anything, and are going to last probably longer than I'm going to. All 3 of them, in fact, built with used materials, right down to the screws themselves. So if you like what you saw here, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stick around because we're doing this sort of thing all the time. See you guys around.